Hey team, Macho Models here, back with the X29. So, viewer discretion, I'm actually gouging into the model. So I looked up how to do some aircraft and weathering damage, and a couple YouTube videos popped up. And namely, the way that they had worked was they would take a pin vise and they would drop the pin vise, with a lighter and heat up the tip, and then push it through the model, and then come back with a series of silver paints and black paints to go ahead and add some more accents to that. So I watched two folks do this, and I was like, hey, that doesn't look too bad. And at this point with the X29, I'll try anything to kind of hide all my errors. So what I did was, and I flashed it just a moment ago, I took my pin vise and I heated it up and I dropped the drill bit in on some key points. So you'll notice it dropped in right here. And then I also dropped it in heated right here. And as I pointed out to you in my last build vlog, those are areas where I really had bad looking decals. So what I'm trying to go for, the effect is number one, I want to distract the viewer, right? So we all know that if you look at these two sections on their own without the heated areas, that they look like hot garbage, right? The decals are all jacked up. So how can I pull the viewer's eyes away? So I used the hot drill bit as an anchor point, and I'll pull back here in a second, and I'll show you some of the other tools and techniques that I did to kind of get the surrounding areas to look like with this kind of like flak effect that I'm doing on these two parts of the aircraft. Okay, so we have our stage setter, and now I'm going to show you guys some of the tools that I'm using to kind of get after all this. So number one, I went across the model with my pin vise, and I used two bits. So out of the Cameos set, I used this bit that was the second from the left, and then I also used the one that was on the far left. So the one that's second from the left is still in on the drill, and this was my largest bit. And all I did was I took a lighter and I just made sure to kind of let it hang there for just a little bit, and then I dropped it into the model. And so when I pulled it out, there was a lot of residue and a lot of little strings, and I just went back in with my files, either a hobby knife, and I just cleaned it out to the point that I liked. But I use this as my large anchor point. So visually, if I was going to pull the viewer away, I want to do this first, and these were going to be the biggest parts that I did. I did this pretty sparingly. I think I only did this on maybe 3 or 4 sections of the aircraft. The next thing that I did was I took this drill bit, and you can see it's kind of charred where I tried to do it similarly. I don't know if I really like the effect with the smaller drill bit. I think I preferred the larger drill bit. But regardless, I went back with this, and then I actually drilled a small set of holes in the paint on different areas. And when we cut back to the X29, you're going to see where I did that. And the reason that I did that was I'm trying to create a template throughout the X29. And let me also say that I started on the bottom first before I went to the top. But the smaller holes kind of create a template that when I go back with some of these other smalling etching tools that I can kind of follow. So, again, kind of reflecting on the last video about decals, I'm trying to think about how everything flows, right? Like I don't want to, do these pieces, like do all the weathering in one spot and then do all the weathering on one spot. I want to kind of see how it's all going to flow together and create a trail for my eye to see if I like it. So once I'm done with the pin vices, the next step is to come in with my chipping tools. So I'm using my BMC chisels to kind of get after the paint. And from biggest to smallest, I'm using a 0.5 for some of the larger marks that you're going to see. And then I also use a 0.2 for some of the smaller marks. I have some other tools here. I tried using, this is I think it's a Cameos punch. Let's see if it's labeled anywhere. Now, this is a Cameos punch tool. So commonly people will use this to kind of leave a mark and then come back with either, their drill or their anchor point. I think I did use this for some of the smaller drill points just to give the tip something to bite into. And I tried it for a little bit of weathering, but I'm really too keen on it. I used my hobby knife again, just on kind of some smaller parts where, I should say larger parts where I used this large drill bit. I needed to dig out the leftover residue. I also used my nippers back there. There's one little section on the wing root where I actually clipped it, and I'll probably do that on another one just to give some visual symmetry. But these are all the tools, and then I'm going to show you guys on when I cut back to the X29 how the template works, and we're going to go ahead and pick one of the holes and then kind of dig in, and I'll show you what my technique looks like. All right, so this is one of the larger holes that was done by my pen vise that was heated up and it was dropped through. And I actually like this little effect right here where you can see all the kind of little plastic bits. What I'm trying to simulate here with these larger pieces is a piece of flak. And for those of you guys who don't know what flak is, it's actually a shell that comes up and it bursts like a grenade. So there's going to be little bits and fragments all around it. It's not like a bullet hole that just goes right through it. And even with a bullet hole, you know, aircraft don't take like bullet holes like peppering, like da 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 da, right? Like the aircraft is moving like 600, 700 knots. And if the bullet's traveling that fast as well, it's not going to give you like a really clean pattern. So if you look, a lot of the bullets are actually like, you know, melted through the wing. So for this one, I'm not going to go too bonkers, but I wanted to show you how I kind of got after it and what I thought makes for a good chip. So I'm using my .5 BMC chisel, and I'm just going to do a few of these because it's kind of hard to film and do on camera. But what I'll do is I'll just come and drop in, and I'm actually going opposite with the BMC chisel. So typically you're going to pull. So I'm just going to push, and I'm just ever so gently kind of drawing a mar and a mark. And then the other big piece is, so as it is, it doesn't look good, but what I typically do is I change my angle, and if you'll notice, I just turn the aircraft at about 90 degrees, and I'll get the tip placed again, and I just kind of wiggle it, and I'm just pushing the paint ever so slightly away. This is actually creating two chips, but I think it looks okay. I'm going to go ahead and combine these as best as I possibly can. Everybody hold your breath. Okay, so let's clean that up and take a look. I have an old toothbrush right here that I'll use, and then I scrape that away. Let me get this back into the center of the frame. So that kind of represents, you know, some follow-on damage from that, and that is the BMC, the .5. I'll cut here in a moment, and I will show you guys what the next step looks like. So that was the larger chisel. Let's go back in now with a smaller chisel to kind of create some supporting marks or damage. All right, I think you guys can see that. Let me slide this just a little bit this way. Okay, great. And as always, 1, 2, 3 blocks are killer, especially when you're trying to work with this stuff. So now I'm going to follow on with some smaller marks, and very similar technique. I'm just going to take my BMC chisel and I'm going to apply a little bit of pressure, maybe wiggle it just a tiny bit. And then for the secondary, the follow-up, I'm just going to rotate the tool. And I'm trying to create imperfect marks, right? I don't necessarily want these it's a battle damage to flow in the same direction. The randomness is good in this instance. So I just got a little frosty with it, and I'm actually doing 3 marks. And then I'll come back, and I'll turn the aircraft this way just a little bit. And I'll come back again, careful to kind of get the tip into the actual mark that we set up as a template. And I'm just wiggling it back and forth. And then hit it with a rocket blower. Okay, so that looks okay. That's not too bad, and this is just a start. I'll be sure to show you guys the final version here after I get a little bit of time to work on it. So before I close out this section, I wanted to show you guys what a completed area looks like, and we already walked through all the techniques, so they hopefully should be pretty apparent. So you'll see that this larger hole is the larger drill bit. Let me get something a little bit smaller to point for you all. The smaller follow-on holes, these are actually drilled in, and then what I did was I went back with my BMC chisel and I just marred up the edges to make the circle look imperfect. You can see that these are the .5 chip marks, some of the larger ones, and then some of the smaller boys are the .2 chip marks. And the reason, I think I mentioned earlier, this might cause some of you guys to cringe that I'm actually going into the paint. Yeah, I under normal circumstances probably wouldn't do something like this, but I want to experiment. I want to try different things. I also really like how this looks. I know you can get a pretty realistic finish by, you know, with painting, and the other really nice part about painting is you can pull it back. None of this will be, you know, able to be pulled back. Like, this is permanently etched in the model. The big, however, is that this looks really realistic. Usually in the afternoons, or you know, when I step away from the model or want a little break from work, I'll look at aircraft damage, and this looks pretty dang close. The other really nice part too is I think I mentioned to you earlier about how I set up my flow and I'm templating where I'm just putting my holes. Like, for instance, you know, this hole was pre-drilled. All along the aircraft, there's pre-drilled holes that I'm using to kind of map out what all of my weathering is going to be. It creates a really nice, realistic finish. And then the other piece is when I come back with my enamels and my acrylics and my oils, I think they're going to drop into here pretty nicely. So I'm pretty excited about this, and we'll see where this goes. All right, that was a rundown of the X29 and all the physical chipping that I'm doing. I'm going to see how long all of this is. If it's under 10 minutes, I'll go ahead and throw it up on a blog. But if it's not, I'll go ahead and combine it with the painting and all the weathering effects that I talked about doing. But it's cool. You know, again, with the cringe factor, this is a little bit of an experiment in itself. It's an experimental aircraft. Haha. See what I did there? But it's cool. I'm having fun with it. I'm totally okay with chipping this lacquer paint job that I dug into it, and I hope you guys stick along to kind of see how everything turns out. I'm feeling pretty hopeful about it, and hopefully I did a pretty good explainer about walking you forward with my technique. I'm also hoping too that when I come back into Gundam or get into armor, I can carry some of these techniques over. I don't know if I'll do it as egregiously as I've done here. Like the marring and the damage is a lot. But I'm very curious to see how it turns out. I hope you guys are too. As always, you know, you guys keep sending me, you know, work in progress pictures. I absolutely love that and love keeping up with y'all. And whatever you guys are getting after, be sure you make it macho.